All right, EJ, 4 teams left. It's conference championship weekend, and there is a common thread among all the teams that are left vying for a Lombardi trophy right now, and it's that they didn't screw up as much as their opponent. None of them had as many yards as the teams they just beat in the division round, and it didn't matter because they had fewer turnovers and fewer mistakes, which in the playoffs, when possessions are limited, play counts are smaller, your mistakes get magnified. So really the goal is less about making plays yourself and more so just avoiding mistakes. These 4 teams, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Bills, and the Chiefs, all limited their mistakes, and they were rewarded with an opportunity to win their conference. Are these 4 teams, in your opinion, I'll start you off with this, are these 4 teams, A, the ones that you thought would be here at the start of the playoffs, and B, in your opinion, are these the 4 best teams that could have made it here? Did the playoffs get it right, so to speak?
Oh, it's the college football playoff question applied to the pros.
Should Alabama be playing for the NFC title is what I'm saying.
A couple of years ago, we had that debate. No, I'm really glad you said at the beginning of the playoffs, because if you've gone all the way back to the beginning of the season, the answer is kind of course not. I actually do think I picked Philly. I'll have to go back and look. I think I picked Philly to show up in the Super Bowl for the NFC. For the AFC, I think I picked the Chiefs, so I might still be alive for that. But in terms of even at the beginning of the playoffs, did I think Washington would continue to play as well as they have? And they have played very well. I want to say this right at the top. They have not lucked their way into anything. They have earned their spot by playing aggressive football. You said the teams that are here are the ones that avoided mistakes. Yes, and they also took their shots and have made their plays and have been very aggressive and done what they needed to do to beat the 2 teams in front of them to get to this point. So did I think they would be here at the beginning of the playoffs? No, I did not. Do I think they deserve to be? They absolutely deserve to be. They are playing great football right now and are a dangerous football team. And we're going to talk about that a lot. The Buffalo KC thing seemed kind of faded. Even when we were talking about it in the summer preview series, we basically said we'd be really surprised if some version of KC Buffalo didn't occur for all the marbles at some point. And that's why everybody was looking at the matchup earlier in the year that Buffalo took narrowly. This is the game. This is the Colts and the Patriots. This is the 2 teams that are just going to keep banging heads at the top of the conference. They're going to see each other. They know it. They say it to each other on the field after games. Hey, we'll see you at the end of the year. They know it's coming. I think that's really good for the NFL, so I'm excited about that. And, Philadelphia, it's funny. They got here. I said they would get here. Did they get here the way I thought they were going to get here? They absolutely did not. At all. It's still cool. It's really interesting. It's going to make for a great matchup. We're going to talk about that today, but I think it's a fun playoffs. Did the playoffs get it right? If you're talking about fun and good football, yeah, I don't think we have any dogs left with 4 teams to go. We have 2 very good matchups, and we're going to have fun talking about it.
Well, we're going to start off with Buffalo KC because, of course, we are. I want to set the table for you here, right? Because these are 2 teams that are similar in a lot of ways that I didn't expect. And a lot of ways that I did expect. Obviously, 2 elite quarterbacks, the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL for a lot of people. Some people would have Lamar, or you want to throw Burrow, like whatever. 2 of the 3 best, let's just say that. Both teams are top 9 as far as plays per drive. They both have these really long, kind of sustained ball control style offenses, which in turn leads to them both being bottom 6 in terms of drives per game because their drives tend to last so long that the clock gets chewed up, so there's less possessions for both teams, and that's by design. They are also both top 10 in scoring efficiency per drive, very similar to what we were talking about with Tampa earlier on in the playoffs, where Tampa was very low in possessions per game, but very high in terms of efficiency of scoring on those possessions. They are top 7 in third down offense, which you kind of need to be a ball control offense. However, both of them, and this is what I find fascinating, I did not see this coming, both of them are terrible third down defenses. They are 28th and 29th respectively on third down. So this is adding up to, much to the chagrin of CBS executives, who want as many commercial breaks as possible. This is adding up to a very fast AFC Championship game with a lot of bled clock, few possessions, low play counts, and therefore a fairly high degree of leverage on each individual play, because it's not going to be like a Big 12 game where it's 90 snaps against 90 snaps. We're looking at like 57 to 60 against 57 to 60, if I had to guess.
Yeah, not very many. You're talking about equally matched teams, and we saw that earlier in the season, but the one that came out that absolutely floored me is head-to-head in the last 10 games. Did you see this?
No.
Okay, this is gonna blow your brain wide open. In the last 10 games, head-to-head, Buffalo and KC, each team has won 5 and lost 5. Okay, that happens. Teams split. I get it. Points for Buffalo, 251. Points for Kansas City, 251. Points against for Buffalo, 251. Points against for KC, 251.
Wait, like dead even point differential over 10 games with a dead even split on wins and losses? Are you kidding me?
Right? Like,
so these are literally the two most even teams you can possibly have.
The mathematical chances that through all the variations of 10 NFL football games, which stretches back a while now, that you would split perfectly evenly. Okay, the odds on that are not astronomical. They're high, but they're not astronomical. 10 games is a lot of games. Right down the middle, I can see it. But to have each team score and have scored against them 251 points
that's insane.
Mind-blowing. Just absolutely. It sets this game up in a way that is so incredibly even. And I know everybody's going to say, pick a winner, pick a winner. I'm like, you pick a winner, right? They're not even separated by 1 point over 10 games. So, yes, each game is its own little universe, its own little microcosm. We're going to talk about this version of it with their current health and their current tendencies. But that to me is just such a fascinating. When I say, Patriots and Colts, I bring that up because they were so well matched. They traded blows. It was always going to be a difficult and tough game. And both teams knew it, and both teams knew it was coming. And this is exactly the same. So I'm going to start with the Buffalo offense. I need them to keep hammering the run. Buffalo managed almost 150 on the ground versus the Ravens. The Ravens' run D was exceptionally good for the last half of the season. So that is a true accomplishment. And Josh only had 20 of those. And I think that is a very important split in that game. I would look for the number to go up in this game a little bit more. I have a feeling when Joe Brady goes back and Josh goes back and they look at that tape, they go, oh, there were a few here where I actually would have liked you to take it off because I think it would have been better for the team. Josh showed admirable restraint. Again, he didn't need to win the game, which is really, really important because there's a lot of things that have changed from this Buffalo team from previous versions, and that's one of them. And I really believe that the second biggest thing about Josh's growth is they're going to hammer the middle zones, and Joe Brady is going to force you to force him out of that, right? They have a lot of players that are really good there. They have, both their tight ends. Shakir works really well in there. James Cook works really well in there. And if you can't stop that, and Spagnuolo knows how to do that, but it's going to put a lot of pressure on the safeties. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Shamari Connor. But the switch for Buffalo is that Josh wasn't patient enough to just take that in the past. He would, and then he would, and then he would, and then he wouldn't. And he would
There's like a couple games where he'd be a point guard. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And now he looks supremely confident going, that's what you're going to give me? That's the right answer? Awesome. And he will do that 8 times in a row, 11 times in a row. Stay in the pocket, distribute the football, and just take the best answer that the defense gives him and be completely just sort of zen about that. And that is not something we have seen from Josh. We have all the jokes about Josh, Sugar Rush Josh, and everything else. That seems to have largely just left him. He is so comfortable with Brady's play calling that Buffalo can play that way now and win. Speaking
Have
of
you seen
running
the
the football,
conspiracy theory that it's because of Haley Steinfeld? That he calmed down and became more efficient once he started dating Haley Steinfeld, and he stopped trying to take big game shots all the time.
Yeah, I've seen that. I don't know how much credence it has. If it's true, Haley, you're doing yeoman's work. Keep it up. It's great.
Behind every great man is a great woman, EJ. Just saying.
Indeed. As far as the Bills rushing the football, I want to see Ty Johnson get his carries. He's been sneaky good as a rushing and receiving threat for the Bills. Josh absolutely loves Ty Johnson and everything he does, blocking, receiving, running the football. Ty Johnson averaged over 6 yards a carry against the Ravens. Now, did he have a ton of yards? No, but as a counterpoint to James Cook, he's been very, very good. And lastly, for the Bills offense, can we pry Amari Cooper off the milk carton? He has been there since the first week of December. He's been averaging 1 catch per game, just over, like 1.2 catches per game. And KC might just have forgotten about him. I doubt it, because they're one of the teams that prepares the most completely in the entire league. But when I was thinking about putting this together, I was like, what would it feel like if the Bills got done with this game and Amari Cooper's line was 7 for 110?
I think they would say, finally.
About damn time. They would say finally as well. His last game that looked anything like that was the first week of December. The Bills could really use it. They have proven that they don't need him, which is the exact opposite. It's so funny because it's like swinging from one pole to another. Before it was like, if we don't get Stephon Diggs the ball, we will lose at some point. Probably in the playoffs. Diggs moves on. They end up trading for Amari Cooper midseason. And now they're like, no, we don't need him at all. Like, we're not even going to throw him the ball, and we're going to end up in the AFC Championship. See, we proved it. We don't need an alpha receiver, but wouldn't it be cool if this is the game where Brady goes, Amari, guess what? We're going to get you a bunch of targets. Between the 20s, it's going to be the Amari Cooper show. And then we're going to drop right back into all the things that have worked for us in the red zone, score points that way. I think it would be a fascinating turn for Buffalo, and maybe something that would catch KC off guard for possibly the first half.
And if there was a game to do it, it's this one, because we know that on third down, and this is not a very good third down team for a variety of reasons, but one of those reasons was on third down, they're a very man coverage heavy team on anything that's 3rd and 6 or less, right? And they had one DB that was really, really capable of doing it, and that was Trent. And they didn't have Jalen Watson for a huge chunk of the season. I think he had a fibula break off the top of my head. It was some leg injury. But he came back for the Houston game and allowed 8 yards. So I have to imagine Spags is going into this game still with all intentions of playing man coverage on 3rd and manageable and trusting his guys to win. But now he's got an actual CB2. They didn't have a CB2 for a lot of the year. So that is kind of like a game within the game, matchup within the matchup type thing here of like, hey, if Amari Cooper can win on those man coverage reps and potentially give them an explosive option on third down when they see man coverage, that kind of completely flips this game on its head a little bit. I would also say on the flip side of that, Chris Jones against both Spencer Brown and Dion, both these tackles. That is the matchup here as far as Bills offense versus Chiefs defense, right? Because he is their best edge rusher by far. He's also their best interior rusher by far. He has more snaps on the edge on third downs than on the inside because it's a lot harder to double him if he's lined up as a wide defensive end than as a 3 technique. But what I found when I was going through all the tape study of every single pressure he had on third down, and most of those coming from the edges, as well as my tape study of all the pressures that Karlaftis has had on the other side, because those are their 2 primary edge rushers on third down. The common theme that I saw was they take a very wide arc, both of them. Like Chris Jones, like his favorite move is that double swipe to get to the edge. Like he got Blake Fisher on it last week against Houston. He's gotten a bunch of tackles on that double swipe where he tries to get upfield, win around the corner, flip his hips, and close down. Like, say, I don't know, any edge rusher that's 245, not 295, but he's Chris Jones, so he can do that. Karlaftis, similar kind of thing. He's not really somebody who has a bunch of twitch that can win with inside counters, so he's either running through you with power or he's going to take a super wide arc around the outside and hope he can kind of clean things up as the deepest layer of four-man pass rush, right? If you take away those wide arcs from both of them with chips, let alone the fact that the Bills have two great tackles, their edge rush completely goes away. This is a very niche stat, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway. Against chip blocks, Chris Jones included, the Chiefs' edge rush rotation, or entire D-line rotation, is ranked 32nd in the NFL at pass rush win rate. If you take away those wide arcs and you make them win either with power and compressing the pocket, or you make them win with inside counters, if you chip them and take away that edge, they kind of got nothing. So what I'm doing here, if I'm Buffalo, and Buffalo knows this because they've already played them, when I get Chris Jones against Spencer Brown on third down, not that Spencer needs a ton of help, but he's a freaking grizzly bear out there. So I'm going to throw a chip at Chris Jones' way, take away that access to the edge, and make him try to run through me with power, because I don't think he could do that against Spencer Brown. And all due respect to Chris Jones, first ballot Hall of Famer, that is not his game. Like, he is not a power rusher against a tackle that is built like Chris Brown. So all that to say, Amari against man coverage on third down, extremely important. Chip blocks against Chris Jones and Karlaftis on third down, incredibly important. If you can take away their edge rush and if you can break their man coverage, I'm not sure what other cards Spags is going to have to play. And he's one of the best big game coaches of all time. We know that. But at that point, he'd be pretty deep into the deck to find an answer there. And this is already a defense that, as I said, is 29th on third down. So that, if I'm Buffalo, that's my recipe. I'm not saying it's definitely going to work, but I am saying the numbers and the tape indicates that it probably could.
At some point, somebody's going to commission a study of why we share a brain.
Did you have the same thing?
Two guys I listed in my KC defensive portion of this. Chris Jones is going to have to play out of his mind versus this very good, very big Buffalo defense or Buffalo offensive line. Karlaftis will be a factor. Over the last 4 games for Kansas City, he's logged 24 pressures and 6 of his 11 sacks if you're counting regular and postseason. Wah, wah, wah. Yep, that's true. Like 100% stamp it, bootleg approved. We both agree that those are the guys that are going to have to influence it. And just a word about Chris Jones. You talked about him being first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a great, great player. And great players make big plays in big games. And Chris Jones always seems to find a way. It's typically late in these games to make one of those plays. He'll make more than one play a game. I'm not saying he only makes one play a game. Calm down, Kansas City fans. He makes a lot of plays, but he seems to be able to do that thing that great players do and elevate late in the game and get one big win right when they need it. And I feel like that's kind of the tipping point of why they signed him. There's all the things he does well that we're not going to talk about here because it would take a long time. There are a lot of them. But do you remember when they were talking about whether or not they should re-sign him, right? And there was this big, it's too much money and it's this. And I think when they really sat down, they were like, guys, what are we going to do on defense if we don't have Chris in the times when we're playing Chiefs football at the end of the year when it really matters, high leverage games? We need somebody to win a rush. If we don't have Chris on our roster, what are we going to do?
Lose.
And everybody went, I don't know, and I'm scared of that. We should pay him. And they did. And they paid him a lot. They paid him what he's worth. And he does. He has continued. Not one of those guys that got paid and got soft at all. He continues to make those big plays. And I bet he's going to make one in this game. Spencer Brown, great tackle. One of the most underrated tackles in the league this year. One of the names that gets talked about the least that is having one of the best seasons. He's going to make plenty of plays too. He's going to get his wins. But if you wanted me to bet against Chris Jones making a play in this one late when they need it, I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's almost like, 3rd and 11, Pat's got the ball. It's like, are you absolutely confident that he's not going to run for 12 right here? Like, that's how they always win rings, right?
That's right.
It's because in high leverage situations, they have 3 of the best players in NFL history at making plays in high leverage situations between Mahomes, Kelce, and Chris. And honestly, I'd throw in Trent as well, right? So that's what dynasties are made of, is legendary players that make clutch plays. One quick note, and then we'll get right back to the show. You guys are very familiar with Manscaped at this point because they've supported us forever. But they did just release a brand new addition to their grooming line that you might be interested in called the Chairman Pro, which is an old school electric foil shaver that can give you a professional shave right at home. You can use either the skin-safe 4-blade foil for a smooth finish, or if you want a stubble look, they have multiple options for the stubble trimmer to give you either a 1 to 2 day look or a 3 to 4 day look, depending on your preference. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower if you want, and it makes it easier to clean too because you can just rinse it under the sink. It also, of course, has an LED spotlight so you can see every hair you're trying to shave, and it has up to 75 minutes of runtime. So if you're in need of a new shaver to maintain your stubble or to have a fresh and smooth face every single day, check out the Chairman Pro at Manscaped. And of course, check out everything else they have to offer too, whether it's body trimmers, lotion, shave gels, nose hair trimmers. I mean, you name it, they have it when it comes to grooming. You can see it all at manscaped.com. And if you use promo code BOOTLEG, you'll also get a 20% off discount and free shipping on your order. Again, that is manscaped.com, promo code BOOTLEG. That will give you 20% off and free shipping on whatever you get. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show. And with that, let's get back to it. I want to flip it over the other side, right? KC offense against Buffalo defense. Speaking of 2 of those legendary players, Kelce and Mahomes. For me, and this is going to sound so basic or like I'm just completely reducing the game to one thing, but I've watched enough Chiefs playoff football over the years, or really just enough Chiefs football over the years, period, to say that it truly does all come down to stopping Travis Kelce. Did you say the same thing?
Yep.
God damn it, EJ. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Literally, my line for the Buffalo defense, and we talk about this all the time, that Travis, like, he gets so open and everybody says, just cover Travis Kelce. Why aren't you covering Travis Kelce? We all scream it at our TVs, and we always have. I went a little bit deeper this week, and I dug into why that happens, right? And there was a great thing that, again, we both watched this morning at the same time, with Kyle Long talking to Kevin Clark this morning on his podcast about all the things that Travis does to be great. But if I'm the Buffalo D, first thing I said is do not get lulled to sleep by Travis Kelce. Like and I dug in and I was like, why do people do this? Why in a high leverage playoff game where you have one of the greatest postseason tight ends of all time, not just for the Chiefs, not just of modern history, all time greats. And yet he is wide ass open in the middle of the field. Why does that happen? And it's because of Andy Reid. It's also because of Travis, but it's because of Andy Reid. And Andy Reid is one of the best coaches in the entire league at taking linebackers and pulling them apart and just making them wrong. I'm going to give you 2 choices, and no matter what you do, because of what I have and how I designed this, you're going to be wrong either way. You just need to choose which way you're going to be wrong. And linebackers, generally, that are facing the Chiefs and Travis Kelce, do what we just talked about Josh doing on offense. They do it right. They do it right. They do it right. And then they're like, oh man, Andy Reid, screen game master. Look at that screen. I can see it developing. I'm going to go make a play. And they leave the zone. And then you get that shot of Travis Kelce catching the ball with no one around him for like 5 yards in any direction and turning and, let's be honest, lumbering at this point. He is no longer a sprinter for a whole chunk of yards. And you go, why was he so open? Why did you leave Travis Kelce? And if you go back to the All-22, which I did, and you pull it apart, they'll do it right. They'll do it right. They'll do it right. And then the linebackers will take the cheese on the outside game, the perimeter screen game, the tunnel screen game, Wide zone, doesn't matter. They will sit and they will sit and they'll sit and they'll be like, Travis is there. Travis is there. I can't leave Travis. Reminds me of Top Gun, right? Don't leave my wingman. Don't leave my wingman. Right. And then, I'm going, right? Matt, what are you doing? And Travis Kelce gets another gain and we all scream at our TVs and everything else. So if you are the Buffalo linebackers who are good and made a bunch of plays last week, absolutely, having Milano back really, really helps. But Terrell Bernard had the punch out, like really good play out of the Buffalo linebackers. But like, they've just got to like lock eyes before every play and be like, don't leave Travis.
It's kind of like how Tom Brady used to have it on his wristband. Find Ed, when he played the Ravens, like find Travis and stick on Travis.
Exactly. One of us has to have Travis every play, and we cannot have one of those plays. I'm with you, where you look at each other after the play and go, I thought you had him. Like, those are the ones he makes his money on. He's done it hundreds of times, literally hundreds of times. Like, make the choice. Make somebody else beat you. If it's Noah Gray or Samaje Perine and they beat you, so be it. That's okay. If it's Travis Kelce, we're all going to look at you at the end of the game and go, you let Travis Kelce beat you in a playoff game again, even at this point of his career? And the answer is going to be yes, because he's very good at it. So just don't take that outside cheese. Let them get the check down. Choose the check down. But I'll take my chances dying from that rather than huge chunks to Travis Kelce up the middle of the field.
Well, because you and I wrote notes about a similar thing. Luckily, my points build off of yours.
Good.
The Buffalo defense is one of the defenses that is most keenly aware of where he is because he's hurt them so often, which is why in the first matchup, he had 2 catches for 8 yards because they didn't leave him, right? And they played him very, very well. I think that they're going to have to, I don't want to say copy and paste that same game plan, but they're going to have to remember that was a big reason why they won that game in the first place, is because you held a top 2 tight end ever. Chiefs fans will say top 1. I'll let Patriots fans and Chiefs fans debate who's sure. Top 1. I'll just say top 2 tight end ever. You didn't let him take over the game, and that's why you won in the regular season. A whole bunch of teams did forget about Travis throughout the year, which is why he ended up with like 97 catches again, despite running 11 miles an hour on average at his age and not even being in shape for the first half of the season. And even Chiefs fans will tell you, like, he was not in shape until after Halloween. But he was top 10 in the NFL in terms of catches settling in between holes in zone coverage or finding space in busted coverages. Every other player in the top 10 was a wide receiver. And then here's old man Travis just getting literally 48% of his yards just doing that. He also led the team in third down catches against man coverage, because even though he can't accelerate a whole lot anymore, he still has, to Kyle Long's point, great feet and great hips, and they routinely will set these traps in the game where it's like, we're going to call mesh, we're going to call car wash, we're going to do all this stuff that's going to get him working crossing routes and shallows and all this kind of stuff, and we're going to get him running horizontally. And then we're going to get a man call on 3rd and 3. He literally did this every other week. There was a high leverage 3rd down against man coverage that he did this. And he's going to fake like he's running that shallow, and he's going to stop, and he's going to pivot. It's going to be a return route outside. DB's going to fly over the top of him because his whole goal is to get the DB out of his leverage and put him inside so I can break back outside, and it's going to be a free first down. He literally led the team in catches on 3rd down just doing that. So he can't run very fast, but he can for damn sure still run that route. And Buffalo did a great job of stopping it. They tried it a couple times and they stopped it because they still respect him enough to bracket him with an east-west bracket so that they don't get got from that kind of stuff. But I also think on scramble drills specifically, this has always been an underrated thing with Travis.
Yep.
On scramble drills specifically, you have to play Kelce a very particular way because he plays scrambles a very particular way. He does it differently than almost everybody else I've ever seen ever in this sport. And I have a couple examples. If you're watching this in the YouTube version, you'll see it on the screen. There was a play against Baltimore in week 1 where Travis is running over the middle and he sees Pat start running to his right. And at that point, Travis knows, okay, I know Pat's running to his right. I need to get to that side of the field, but I've got a man defender on me. I need to shake him. That man defender didn't know where Pat was. And so you saw Travis slightly turn up the field and then nod to his left as if he was running a scramble drill to the left, got the DB, shook, and then broke back to the right and found space. Right? He did it a different way against Cleveland. Again, Pat was running to his right. It was one robber. It wasn't one hole. It was one robber, or some guys call it one cross. Okay, I have a safety lingering in the middle of the field. If I keep this route going while Pat's running to his right, I'm going to get tagged. We're probably not going to get a first down. Both of these were on 3rd and long, by the way. And so understanding that Pat was going to be looking for him, he then wheeled back and started running left, trusting that Pat was going to do that shortstop type throw and hit him in the middle of the field. And so when I talk about handling Travis on scramble drills, it's less about physically sticking with him and more so about understanding that he reads your coverage like a quarterback. He knows exactly, he is aware of where everybody is. So even if Pat's running to his right, it doesn't always mean he's going to be running to his right. Sometimes he's going to shake left and run right. And sometimes if you have a defender waiting for him, a hang defender, he's going to break back left. And so you almost have to anticipate that and know, based on the coverage you're in, that he's reading your coverage. He's not just playing off instinct, he's playing off intelligence. And he reads defenses like a quarterback, which is why he always finds that spot, whether it's zone, man, scramble drill, whatever. And that's what's so infuriating about playing against him, right? Because even when you're right, he can make you wrong. So the Bills are one of the only teams that I think handle him on these 3rd downs properly. They handle him on these scramble drills properly. And that was a big reason why he had 2 catches for 8 yards in their last meeting. If they can do that again, they win. But easier said than done.
Incredibly easier said than done, because his being Travis's anticipation of space is elite for any player in the league. And that includes quarterbacks, wide receivers, DBs, tight ends. I don't really care. Yeah, running backs are anticipating where space is going to be. And when we see a running back that has that ability, or even half of it, we go, oh man, that guy's got great eyes. He's got great vision. He's got great anticipation. He is aiming for a hole that's not yet there. When he gets there, it appears like Travis's ability to do that for the entire field, like you said, for the entire defense, and read that like a quarterback and know, if I do this, he's going to do this. So I need to zig because he thinks I'm going to zag, to break him open, to pry him off, to whatever. All of those things he does at probably one of the greatest levels ever for any player at any position. And it is what makes all these receptions look stupidly easy. Like everybody just forgot that Travis Kelce was there. And it's not the case at all. Travis made sure that he could make it look like that. And it is an elite ability. It's what allows him to play, even though his physical skills have eroded. He's still tough as hell. He's still got great hands. We saw that on the long catch last weekend where he ran through a couple of guys. Like, he's not running away from anybody anymore. He doesn't have that kind of speed, but doesn't mean he's not going to gain lots of extra yards in every way. So a very, very dangerous player. And I think what you said that rings true with me the most is Buffalo still treats him as that, right? They'll still treat him with brackets. They will still make sure that they've got him handled, because they know if they let him go, there are certain players, if you let them go, certain quarterbacks that if you let them outside the pocket, that's it, right? So you need to play contain, and you need to be disciplined, and you need to do all those things. With Travis, it's the same way. Buffalo knows if they let him go, he'll take over the game. So they're not going to do that. But all this time, we should probably talk a little bit about Pat and the offense, because basically we've just said, they're really good. Like, they're great.
Well,
all-timers.
it's going to sound boring, because it's going to sound like I'm taking the ball out of Pat's hands. But you saw what that Ravens run game did to Buffalo's front. And we've talked about this in every single Bills game that we previewed for a while now. Like, run defense is a problem. So, like, if there was ever a time to have a vintage Kareem Hunt day,
Jesus Christ.
Because he's a bit. Did you write down Kareem Hunt too? EJ.
I will just read it verbatim so you don't think I'm bullshitting you. Pound on the inside of the Buffalo defensive line. They held up surprisingly well versus the Ravens in the first half, but they have to be beat up from that. Press on them with Kareem Hunt. Fiend.
Big backs, man. Big backs. That's the key.
I was really surprised. Were you surprised? I'll start you with a question about Buffalo's run defense because we have talked about it multiple times over multiple years. We've talked about it again this year. Were you surprised how well they held up in the first half? Not the second half when the levee broke and, Derrick Henry did Derrick Henry things. But in the first half, I was borderline shocked with how well the Bills played the run.
They were playing inspired, right? Because they're not a very big or very strong interior defensive line. And I think that they were playing inspired football in the first half, truly, and that's why they were up by so much. And then that any run game that features Derrick Henry is always going to catch wind in the second half, and so you kind of felt that it was coming. But I was genuinely worried for Buffalo there, and it was a 2-point game, right?
Yeah,
were not for a Mark Andrews drop, we could be having a very different discussion right now. Now, again, there was 90 seconds on the clock. Buffalo still very easily could have driven back down the field, kicked a field goal, whatever. But Baltimore was down by a lot, and they didn't come back by throwing. They came back by running and running and running, even Justice Hill. Holy shit, he was running hard.
I want what he's having because I like Justice Hill a lot. I think he's a great complementary player, but he looked like he got the old school version of smelling salts before the game because he was hyped.
Coke?
He was.
I think that's the old school version.
Right.
Whatever
that's
Lawrence
the
Taylor used to do.
1970s version of here, sniff this. No, he looked like crazy jacked up in that game. He was running so hard, running into guys, running over guys. He just seemed like he turned back the clock, to, at whatever point Justice Hill was running as hard as he had in his life. That was that game. It was obvious. There's been a lot of energy in these playoffs in certain games. The Detroit Washington game was a hard hitting affair. They came out and lit each other up. And then, first carry, Justice Hill comes out and I was like, whoa, zang, 8 shots of espresso, huh? He was ready to go.
But I just loved that Baltimore stuck with it. Their run pass ratio was 55%, even when they were losing for a lot of that game, right? So I respect that Todd Monken had learned from last year of hey, we stopped running and that cost us. He didn't stop running, and that's why they even had a shot.
Yep.
And it eventually, again, Buffalo played inspired defensive football in the first half. It eventually led to them just cracking and having the same issues that they've had for a while now, really ever since pre Daquan Jones injury last year. They just haven't had anybody who's just been consistently tough on the inside. So I worry about that against a KC offensive line that has some pretty tough dudes on the inside, and Kareem Hunt, who just consistently has been a battering ram for this team. And even go back to his Cleveland days and even going further back to his first KC days. He's always been a battering ram.
Yep.
And so, yes, we can sit here and say okay, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. And, he's on the fast track to being the GOAT. And this is going to be a signature Mahomes win. And he's going to do Mahomes things. I don't even think it's really about that. I really don't. I think it's about run the ball with Kareem Hunt. Pat will make a few plays here and there on third downs to extend drives, but I don't anticipate that the pass game is why KC is going to win. I really don't. It's about playing good defense, ideally playing better man defense on third down. Now that they have Jalen back, running the ball. Each team gets 9 possessions. We score on 1 more than they do, and we're going to the Super Bowl. I think that's literally what it is.
Yeah, I would agree. It's going to be a tight game, and the rushing game is going to be key for both teams. They're going to approach it differently, but looking for the same results, which is control of the clock, control of the field, the ability to impose the will and get that without putting the ball in harm's way. Both secondaries are opportunistic. If you can reduce those risks, and both teams have to this point, that's the game plan you're going to go with. It's only if either or both defenses can stop that and really stymie it that then we're going to get the kind of air duel shootout between Josh and Mahomes that I think a lot of people think is going to be from the get-go.
I think people want an aerial assault from both these teams because it's fun.
Sure.
But that's just not what they are.
No, not right now.
And that's on purpose. It's not because
Correct.
they can't.
No, it's by design.
It's by design because that's how you win football games, right? Also, by the way, bootleggers, come back to this clip when Leo Chanel on a high leverage 4th down when there's 6 offensive linemen on the field. Come back to this clip right now when he gets a tackle for loss and ends up winning KC the game. Because I guarantee you that if there's anybody who's going to come through in a clutch moment, it's going to be fucking Leo Chanel because he always does.
Yeah.
Love that guy. One of my favorite sandbackers in the league. Does not get as many snaps as he should because they don't play him in nickel. But damn, he's awesome. Love Leo. All right, second game on the docket here. Washington, Philly. Who doesn't love a good division rivalry conference championship game? Third time these teams have played each other this year. First time, Philly dominated. Second time, Philly started the game dominating. And I want to set the table here properly because I know Eagles fans are going to be irate if I don't set it properly here. Started the game dominating. Washington had a couple turnovers early. They failed on 4th down. They fumbled the ball. Jalen Hurts led a touchdown drive and then was in the middle of leading another touchdown drive, which he got most of the way down the field. And then he got hurt. Kenny Pickett came in, finished that one off. Then Saquon ripped off a big run. Next thing you know, it's 21-7. Philly's comfortably in the lead. Here we go again. They're gonna put Commanders in a trash can. All of a sudden, Kenny Pickett throws a pick. Jaden starts dropping dimes, goes from 14-0 to 21-7 to 21-14 real fast, right, at halftime. And there's also a missed field goal in there, too, for Philly. And you could kind of sense halfway through that game, like, they're kind of just letting them hang around, right? And it's punt, punt, punt. Pickett can't get anything. He doesn't lead any more touchdown drives the rest of the day. I think he gets 4 field goal drives out of it. And when you're trading 3s for 7s against Jaden Daniels, eventually they're going to catch up, even if you start out with a 14-point lead. And they caught up in the last 6 seconds where Jaden threw that game-winner touchdown. Now, Eagles fans are also going to say, well, yeah, but that's a moot point if Devonta just catches that ball in 3rd and 5. You're correct. He didn't catch it. That wasn't the main reason they lost. The main reason they lost was Jalen got hurt, Kenny couldn't finish drives, and Jaden Daniels is the fucking man. That's the reason they lost. Now, is that going to happen again this weekend? Tough to say, right? I can't just count on Jalen Hurts getting injured again. I can't just count on all these turnovers happening again and missed field goals. Like, there was a lot of wonky shit that happened in that game. But we have seen now, proven time and time again, if you do mess up, if you do let Washington hang around and you give Jaden Daniels all these extra chances, he will cut your heart out. He is that good. If you're looking at the starting rosters, offensively and defensively, between these two teams, Philly's got a better offensive line. They've got a better defensive line. You could argue before the Nakobe injury, they had better linebacking core because Zach Bond's been amazing. Now that Nakobe's hurt, fine, whatever, we'll call that a wash. Better DBs, better receivers, better running back, better tight end. Like, there's not a single position group that the Commanders are better than Philly. But they've got a top 5 to 6 quarterback in the NFL. And boy, that counts for a lot. So this game is ultimately going to be what matters more, the roster or the quarterback? The first time they met, it was about the roster. The second time they met, it was about the stark difference in quarterback play. Third time around, I guess we'll see.
If you told me that a rookie quarterback was going to be a huge challenge for Vic Fangio to contain, kind of like ever, I would be like, nah, I don't think you're correct. Daniels is playing so crazy well right now. And we've been saying the same thing for the past couple of weeks. Like, the other team's better, but Jaden's Jaden. And he just keeps being Jaden and becoming a better version of himself, which is the scariest part. He's playing so well right now. His choices have gotten so clean and correct and quick that he looks almost unpressurable right now. And that's not because his offensive line is playing great. And they had some injuries in the last game. We'll see how that shakes out. It's because he is so sharp right now, so self-assured, so understanding, and just in absolute sync with Cliff and his play calling. He understands what Cliff wants him to do, not just where he wants him to go with the ball, but like what the point is. And he's getting to that and through that so quickly and correctly over and over again. Doesn't matter whether it's an RPO, whether he should pull it or keep it, whether it's, a quick slant and then go to the backside. Like, he is not looking past options, right? I think about what JT says all the time about quarterback play. It's like, oh, he passed over that. He shouldn't have. Should have gone through that a little bit slower. No, he's properly assessing, but it's so quick and smooth. It almost looks like he's passing it over. But when you go back and look at it, you're like, no, that was the correct call, correct call, correct call. Okay, he was on 3 or 4 a second and a half in, right? And he's throwing the ball at 2.2 seconds, and it's the correct call, and it's on time and on target. He missed a couple layups, which he was prone to do in college, but like, he will just drop dimes, right? He is fearless down the field. And that combination of being right mentally so quickly on the vast majority of plays now, and then the ability to just go, screw it, I'm going for 40. I know your guy's in coverage. I don't care. And being able to hit those and then walking down the field like, yep, I expected to hit that. That's what makes him such a challenge and so difficult to contain right now. So Fangio's got to find a way to pressure Daniels with 4 rushers. Now, before everybody says, well, they have a great defensive line. They do. They have an amazing defensive line and a deep rotation. That's where that roster comes in. We've talked about how he's rostered over and over again. It's tremendous. But in this case, I think Vic Fangio might have to stray from type. He might have to be an old dog doing new tricks and bring that pressure from other places, because that might shake Jaden Daniels. We'll see. I don't know. If you just rush straight
You're just trying to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
100%, because Vic is known for rushing with 4, right? And winning with 4 and playing games behind that. But for the most part, when you say exotic pressures coming from all angles, Vic Fangio is not the first name that comes to mind. Now, there are some players, Gardner Johnson, DeJean, that he could use in that role if he chooses to, if he thinks that's the wisest thing to do. I don't know. I'm going to be fascinated to see his approach because, again, Vic Fangio's been around. He's seen it all. He understands it. I want to see what his assessment is of Jaden Daniels at this point. Again, this is the 3rd time he's played him this season, but this is not the same guy he played in the first game. It's not even the guy he played in the second game. Jaden Daniels has continued to ascend, and I want to see if Vic sort of recognizes that by going against type and trying to shake it up a little bit, or if he's like, no, I know how to do it against this guy, and gets what the last 2 teams got, which is Jaden Daniels going, yep, I see it, I'll raise you.
I think the biggest factor here in this matchup between the Commanders offense and Vic Fangio is unfortunately the loss of Sam Cosmi, because Sam Cosmi, the excellent guard for the Commanders, one of the best guards in the NFL, he kind of changes the math in Philly's favor. And if you go back to the first 2 matchups that these teams played, Vic heavily, like more than I'm used to seeing, heavily leaned into cover 3 and cover 1, because when you're playing against this Commanders run game, obviously Jaden's very mobile. You don't really want to give them even numbers in the box because they can punish you with that when the quarterback is a factor in the run game. So we played a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 1, get bodies down there so that we have a numbers advantage and try to stop this run. With Sam Cosmi out with the very unfortunate ACL tear, it was just terrible. He's such a good player, and I felt so bad for him. That really changes their math, because when they were in these single high structures, Jaden punished those one-on-ones outside. On both, he punished Darius with, I think it was De'Ami Brown, and he punished Quinyon with Terry McLaurin. So, like, even as good as the Philly corners are, when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels that throws such a good deep ball, and you have a guy like Terry McLaurin, like, even they are not safe from that. Nobody is safe from that, right? But when you lose Cosmi and it changes the math, now I have a theory, just like you. We're just throwing theories out there. We don't know. I feel like he's not going to call as many single high safety structures, because he doesn't have to do it to stop the run, because Sam Cosmi gave them a shot at blocking Jalen Carter.
Right.
There's nobody else on the Commanders roster that can block Jalen Carter. So for me, I am leaning more into quarters, and I'm leaning more specifically into quarter, half, these two high safety structures, and just dare them to run the ball. Like, I am daring you to run the ball with a backup right guard against one of the best defensive tackles in the entire NFL. We think even if we have even numbers, our 6 are better than your 6, or our 7 are better than your 7, or 5, like whatever the numbers are. If it's even, our dudes are better than your dudes. So we're going to stop the run, and we're going to play coverage structures on the back end that don't give you those one-on-ones outside. And more specifically, don't give you even numbers outside in the screen game. Right? We talked about that last week with Commanders Lions. Like, you can't give this team even numbers outside, because they will screen you to death. And they popped a 58-yard screen to Terry against Detroit last week. So if you're playing quarter, half, which Vic did do that a little bit against Jaden, in mostly just obvious passing situations where he didn't have to worry about the run. He did it in 9 total dropbacks in the first two meetings. Jaden was 7 of 7, but only for 18 yards, right? So that's 2.6 yards per attempt. And the reason why it was frustrating them was because if you're playing a quarter, half, or a half quarter defense, and the half field safety is over Terry's side, congratulations, you just stopped the deep ball, right? Or if you're playing half quarter, where you're playing the half field safety over the other side, like let's say Terry's isolated and you got trips to the other side, and you're playing half quarter to the other side, we're playing cover 2 to the trip side. Now we have a hard, flat defender that's going to stop the screen game. So it's kind of checkmate, right? And they'll just play it based off where Terry is. They're always going to put the half field safety to his side. But it's kind of checkmate, right? Where it's like, okay, we have options against the screen game. We have options to stop Terry from beating us deep. We can stop the run because our dudes are better than your dudes, because you don't have Sam Cosmi anymore. And now, from a Commander's perspective, now I'm kind of running out of options here, right? And now I'm basically looking at it as, okay, we don't have the numbers outside. We don't have the talent inside. We basically just have Jaden Daniels. What do we do with that? Like, you can do a lot with that, but that specific loss for them was so devastating. And I feel like that is the reason why ultimately the Commanders will not win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, scales tip in the favor for sure, because again, Jaden's been terrific, but he needs assistance. He can't throw it to himself, right? And he's been great hitting those deep balls when he's been given one-on-one opportunities. I do think Eckler has a role to play here, specifically in the screen game and them trying to use it. But again, if Philadelphia has a hard defender against that, it's going to be less effective. But as Eckler's return to health, it's been pretty obvious. He, struggled with injuries in midseason, and as he's gotten healthier over the last month, his role has increased, his energy's increased. He looks more like the old Eckler, and he's very dangerous in that portion of the game. But there's only so much you can do when you're running up against extra defenders. When you don't have numbers, the the classic running back, hey, it's your job to beat that single defender, and then, the play is going to break open. Well, if it's a defender and a half, it's not going to happen very often against a defense as talented as Philadelphia. It's not saying it won't happen ever. You can still catch them out. Guys can still get picked or trip, whatever it is. And I think Eckler could play a role here, but I think it's going to be too little against Philadelphia. They're rolling right now on offense. They're going to ride the hot hand. Their hot hand is a top shelf offensive line and the leading rusher in the NFL. He had 285 rushing and only 65 passing versus the Rams, and it's working. There is no reason to go away from it. Again, if you can't stop it, that is the handoff is the safest play in football. Nothing is totally safe, but if you can win that way, and they have been winning and winning pretty handily that way, they're just going to try and run it down Washington's throat, and they're going to try and punish the Washington defensive line. And that's going to be an all-out street fight. That's going to be super fun to watch because there's a lot of talent on both sides. We obviously talk about Philadelphia's offensive line being extremely talented. It is, but there's a lot of dudes on that Washington defensive line. A lot of former first-round picks who played really inspired football against the Lions. And it's going to be a war. I'm not saying that Philly's not going to win in the end, but there's going to be some early game runs in this one that are going to be just have the commentators say nothing and just give me the straight feed from the sound dish, because there is going to be a clap of pads. If you're the Washington defense trying to stop that, good luck. But they came out swinging versus Detroit. Again, I said it before, it's a physical game. Like, you could just feel the collisions in that game early on. When people say, it feels like a playoff game, feels like playoff energy. That sounded like playoff energy. And they're going to have to bring every bit of that. It's tough to bring week after week to sort of be at your peak game after game against the toughest opponents, but that's what the playoffs are. And if they don't do that, they don't have any chance against Philadelphia because they are a well-schooled unit. They understand. Saquon is reading the offensive lineman very well. I think it was Troy made a point about chemistry, and we talk about chemistry all the time between quarterbacks and receivers, but we don't often talk about it between running backs and offensive linemen, and the chemistry between Saquon and the offensive line right now in terms of understanding their leverage, understanding how they're going to block guys, understanding when they're going to leave a guy for him, them understanding him. It goes both ways, right? That communication is working so well right now. It's going to be incredibly difficult to stop. And look, for Washington, it's just every play here is super high risk, and not just because it's the playoffs. It's the second week in a row that they're facing a back that one missed tackle will go 70 yards and score. I mean, going from Jahmyr Gibbs to, great, your gift for winning that game is facing Saquon Barkley. Good luck. They're very similar backs in that way, that they are both huge home run threats, but you have to play backs like that all out for 60 minutes. It's got to be everybody in their gaps, hitting with everything you have. And the one time you don't do it is a time where it's going to break and they can turn the game. So it's kind of a leave it all on the field game for Washington. They have to play that way. They probably will still lose, even if they do play that way. But if they don't play that way, you can guarantee they're not going to be able to keep up with Philadelphia.
That run defense is the big question. Not even question. It's almost a certainty at this point because I've just watched them the entire year. That is the big problem for the Commanders defense, right? The average of their depth of tackle so far in the playoffs is 5.1 yards past the line of scrimmage, which is terrible. Yes. And we talked about, the sounds of pads popping was great, but didn't mean that Jahmyr Gibbs still wasn't getting 10 yards, right?
They allowed 201 to Detroit, which is not great, and it's because of that stat that you brought up, the 5 yards per contact. The only silver lining, if you're the Commanders, is they were pretty good on third down. We talked about how bad the Bills and KC are on third down. Like, the Lions, a great offense, were only 3 of 9 on third down. That's
but when you're getting
good.
When you're getting 11 yards on first and second down.
Right. When you only see 9 third downs for the entire game, means you went from first to second back to first a bunch.
That wasn't just a playoff thing, though, because we talk about average depth of tackle in the playoffs being bad. They had the 4th worst average depth of tackle in the regular season, too. So they've been bad all year long as far as consistently stopping the run. Yeah. They allow just under 140 a game. They allow about 5 yards a carry. And now, after letting Jahmyr Gibbs run wild last week, and okay, they still won the game. They got turnovers. Like Jaden had a great week, but it's a whole new animal, right, to go up against Saquon in this Philly run game. And that's saying a lot because Jahmyr Gibbs and the Lions offensive line is pretty darn good too. And Philly is still a level above that. Yep. So I don't know. I don't think Washington has the horses here. I think they have a tremendous young quarterback. I think they have a great coaching staff. But the reason why nobody, and I mean nobody, even the most diehard Commanders fans, didn't even pick them to go to the NFC Championship game is because we all looked at the roster at the beginning of the season was like, they got pieces. They're still a year or two away. Yeah. They just happened to get all the way here because their quarterback and their coaching staff is so damn good. But like, that doesn't mean that the roster is suddenly better than we thought it was going to be. Like, it's not. The roster is the roster. We know what it is. And it's not anywhere close to Philly. No. So I think this season has been a resounding success for Washington. If I was a Commanders fan, I would be stoked. Yep. Because if this is the worst they're going to be, that's pretty encouraging. Like, they still have a lot of picks they can use this year and money. And like, if this is the worst Washington is going to be in the Jaden Daniels era, they will win a Super Bowl somewhere in the next 4 to 5 years, if not sooner than that. So again, I am picking them to lose and lose convincingly. It doesn't mean that I don't think this is a really, really amazing season by them. They earned it. They did not luck their way here, but they're just not ready for this, in my opinion.
They're going to be a little short. You made a chess analogy earlier, and I think another one is appropriate here, and that you can kind of see how this is going to play out in your head. And when you're playing chess, sometimes you realize, oh man, I got beat 3 moves ago, right? Yeah. And they're going to bait the safeties, Chin and Martin, right? Philadelphia's going to bait the safeties into stop Saquon, stop Saquon, stop Saquon. And then what's, Jalen Hurts and Philadelphia's favorite pass play ever.
Go ball down the sideline.
Yeah. Hard play action, deep shot down the boundary to, insert receiver here. And you're just going to watch it happen. You're going to go, okay, they're going to run it with Saquon. They're going to have to bring the safeties down. Okay, they got him in. Now play action's going over the top. And you're like, I lost 3 moves ago. So it's still possible they can win. They can still, like they did last week, create a bunch of turnovers, try and flip the script that way. But they're going to have to do something like that because if they try and play them, quote unquote, straight up, I think they're going to come up short.
Yeah. No, they can't play them straight up. Like they just literally can't play them straight up. Either way, I am really excited to watch the game just because I think Jaden's awesome. I love watching him play. I think Saquon's amazing. I love watching him play. Like this is still going to be great television, even if I'm fairly certain that Philly's going to win. As far as picking Buffalo KC, I'll pick KC just because they're the 2-time defending champs. They've barely lost in the last 18 calendar months. Yeah. They actually have a pretty decent matchup against Buffalo in terms of what Buffalo likes to do. I feel like it would be kind of dumb to pick against them at this point. So I'm going to pick KC, which ultimately means we're getting a rematch of the Super Bowl from a couple years ago. Eagles, Chiefs, Andy Reid Bowl again out in New Orleans. I know you didn't want to pick Buffalo versus KC, but I just have to ask.
That's okay. I probably will pick KC because I had this revelation this morning while I was doing something else, and it's that KC is now a completely different standard than the rest of the league. This is a crappy Chiefs team that is one of the best teams in the NFL. Like, if you look at the Chiefs team, they would say, hey, for our standards, and comparing it to the previous, this is crazy, 6 teams that have gone to consecutive conference championship games, what? Like that's just a gnarly stat, right? If you compare us to those teams, like we have more holes. Like we're not getting any wide receiver production. Like we've had offensive line troubles. We're not the greatest Chiefs team, but greatest Chiefs team is now measured against other Chiefs teams. They still were the number one seed in the AFC. They're rolling towards a possible three-peat. And we're looking at this team and going, they're not good at this, not good at this. Literally better than almost every other team in the NFL this year. But if you compare them to previous Chiefs teams, that's the standard they've created, right? By doing all these amazing things, by going on this amazing run, is we're no longer measured against other teams in the NFL. We're measured against the teams that came before us that, wore red and gold. And it's just very hard to look at that entire organization. We talk about the coaching staff, obviously Pat, the offense, all the playmakers, Chris Jones on defense, all the secondary guys that we love, and say they don't have a good chance at home to go back to the Super Bowl. They do. Is it going to be a tight game? Yes. Can Buffalo win it? Yes. I think this game is much tighter than the other game being played this weekend. I'm going to pick KC at home. I said in the summer I wasn't going to pick against them. In terms of what I would like, sure, I'd like to see Josh and the Bills shake it up. I think that would be cool. I think they've earned it as well, right? They have to earn it by winning again versus KC. But I think that'd be a cool storyline. If we're talking about the coolest storyline, that's probably the coolest storyline for me. But if I'm picking the game, I'm going to say Pat and the Chiefs at home are going to make just enough plays to get by Buffalo.
Yeah, I told myself last season I was not going to fall for it again.
That's right.
Right? I was not like I will not get fooled. If Buffalo wins, awesome. Like again, you brought up the stat about last 10 meetings, literally even win-loss record, even point differential. Like I would not be surprised in the least if the Bills won this game.
Nope.
Not even remotely surprised. Doesn't mean I'm going to pick against KC.
Right.
Because I promised myself 12 months ago I wasn't going to do it, and I'm going to hold myself to it.
There you go.
If they're in the championship, I'm picking them until proven otherwise. So, all right. I want to thank all of our sponsors for making this episode possible in the first place. I did put together a little underdog entry because we hit last week in the division round.
Boy, were we due.
we did a flex entry, so it was 4 out of 5, right? But that's how you do it. Always do flex entries. Don't try to go 5 for 5 because you're probably not going to win. So I hit 4 out of 5. The only one I missed was Jaden Daniels rushing by like 4 yards. So that's
so close.
That kind of annoyed me. But my championship week entry, I have not shared this with you ahead of time.
No.
I have Saquon higher than 21.5 for the longest rush because I feel like every time he hits a 60-yarder, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Josh Allen higher than 31.5 passing attempts because I feel like they might struggle to run the ball a little bit if they're trying to do all the 6 offensive linemen thing. And Casey's run defense is way better in base personnel because Leo Chanel's out there. So I feel like they might get stopped on the ground and have to throw. Not necessarily bombing it down the field, but kind of replacing their run game with the quick passing game. So give me Josh Allen higher than 31.5 pass attempts. Travis Kelce lower than 68.5 receiving because Buffalo is one of the only defenses to our discussion earlier that knows how to handle him. Kareem Hunt higher than 8.5 rushing attempts because we think it's going to be a Kareem Hunt kind of day.
Yep.
And Brian Robinson Jr. higher than 9.5 rushing attempts solely because I think Philly is going to kind of dare the Commanders to run the ball on them, if I had to guess. So, any complaints with that?
Yeah, the Josh one scares me because, again, if we're talking about 2 years ago, Josh, I'd be like, I don't know, that seems like even money. If we're talking about Josh now, they've shown admirable restraint, and they are a run-first team. Most people don't. I think people are coming around to that idea, but really since Joe Brady took over, he's upped the run percentage pretty dramatically. And then he just kept doing it at the beginning of this season. Most people kind of thought he was done, but he's like, nope, I'm just going to keep turning that switch up. And they're profoundly a run first team at this point, and Josh has bought into that, right? That's, you'd get to the end of the game and it's like, well, Josh held on. He was good for 3.5 quarters. Now he's just going to whip it, right? And he's out of that habit. So if you'd said 25.5, maybe, I would be like, that feels like the line to me. 31.5 feels like, wow, Josh Allen whipping it all over the yard. When's the last time he had that many attempts?
I'm going to look it up. Hold on.
All right. It feels like it might be a while. Now, it could be 3 weeks ago and my brain's just failing me. And that's, I would not be surprised by that.
He had 22 against Baltimore, 26 against Denver. And before that, 27, 29, 34, mid-December against Detroit when it was like 48-42. And then the LA game that was 44-42.
Right.
And then before that, KC, middle of the season.
Right.
40.
So it has happened. We do have precedent.
It has happened, but not in month
not
and
a bunch.
Half. Yeah.
Not a bunch,
right.
and not recently. And that's, so that one gives me a little pause because it just feels like high. I think it's 31 or 31.5.
31.5. Right.
That feels up there to me. So that's the one that kind of, stands the hair up on the back of my neck. The rest of them, I'm down.
All right. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening, however you happen to be watching and listening. Thank you to Underdog once again for making this possible. Use promo code BOOTLEG either at the QR code on the screen or at the link in the description. You'll get both up to $1,000. My cat jumps up here in the middle of the ad read. You'll get up to $1,000 in deposit bonuses, as well as a Patrick Mahomes free pick for new customers this weekend. Thank you to Homage. Thank you to Manscaped. Thank you to all of our executive producers over on the Patreon. This little guy is desperately craving dinner, so I'm going to go feed him. And we will see you all next week.